Our president, El Presidente Donald John Trump, has announced his intentions to force changes at the Smithsonian Institute with an executive order that targets funding for programs that advance what he calls divisive narratives and improper ideology. You heard that. So basically, he's coming after black history. He's coming after black history. Now, why is he doing this? He's claimed that there's been a concerted and widespread effort over the past decade to rewrite history by replacing objective facts with a distorted narrative driven by ideology rather than truth, adding that it casts the founding principles of the United States in a negative light. Yeah, you know, like founding principles like slavery and genocide and colonialism. And so, yes, I think we might actually be finally recognizing that those things are seen and should be seen in a negative light. The order he signed behind closed doors put Vice President J.D. Vance, who serves on the Smithsonian Institution's Board of Regents, in charge of overseeing efforts to remove improper ideology from all areas of the institution, including its museums, education and research center, and the National Zoo. Now, this is what authoritarian governments always do. They want to rewrite history. You know, this is what they do. They try to rewrite history. Because there's a lot of things that are inconvenient about America's history to the narrative that not only Trump, but our government wants to perpetuate. So now they're trying to overtly just change and rewrite history. It marks the Republican president's latest salvo against cultural pillars of society, such as universities and art, that he considers out of step with conservative sensibilities. Trump recently had himself installed as the chairman of the John F. Kennedy Center of the Performing Arts, with the aim of overhauling programming, including the annual Kennedy Center's Honors Award show. I knew something like this would happen when Trump got reelected because, again, I think so many of the Democrats, the liberals, went ham with what is called wokeness. It's not actual wokeness, but it's really political correctness. During the last decade or so, really in the post-Obama era, the liberals OD'd on the political correctness. I knew that would lead to a huge backlash, that would, lead to a huge swing in the opposite direction. And that is definitely what we are seeing here right now, where, for years, the Democrats basically pushed their gender identity politics and pushed the looga booga tooga, LGBTQRS TUV stuff on everybody. And I knew that once that pendulum swung, it would always swing back towards black people. And this is why I warned about letting white liberals and the colored people who love them hijack the civil rights movement and repurpose it for their own stuff, the feminist stuff, the gay stuff, the illegal immigrants, and all these other things. I knew that when all these things were being propped up and used under the guise of civil rights, that when there was a backlash to this, it would be catastrophic for black people. Because we are the ones who still don't have any wealth in this country. We are 15, 16 generations deep in poverty as a community for 400 years. So now we don't have, at least the one thing we did have on our side was the narrative, the idea that we had the objective truth on our side. Now they are trying to literally change objective truth. That's literally what Donald Trump's saying. he's accusing others of replacing objective facts with a distorted narrative driven by ideology rather than truth. But now he feels like that's what he gets to do. And it's really unfortunate. And you see this war being perpetuated by Trump and his people against the correct history of this country, particularly black history of this country. This is just a continuation of them forcing Columbia University to make a series of policy changes by threatening that Ivy League school with the loss of several $100 million in federal funding. They are literally trying to whitewash the genocide in Gaza. You know, this starts with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris allowing protesters at Columbia to be falsely painted as anti-Semitic, considering a lot of the student leaders are Jews themselves. This isn't like a situation in which the conservatives, right-wing Fox News, go find some random black person to get on their airwaves to say all the racist stuff that they can't say, like Jason Whitlock or Candace Owens or somebody. Oh no. These movements are being led by Jews. Jill Stein, people like Jews for Peace, people like Cindy Sheehan and Code Pink. All these people have been doing this for generations, for decades. They have been some of the biggest anti-war leaders that we've had in this country. So many leftist commentators that have been going for many years who've been anti-war in all spaces, like Max Blumenthal and Katie Halper and Aaron Mate and his father Gabor Mate, who literally escaped the Holocaust. Literally, he escaped the Holocaust. And now him and his son are being called anti-Semitic because they refuse to repeat and to validate Israel's genocidal intentions in Gaza. And so this is what happens when you start giving credence to these sort of false narratives. You give them an inch, they'll take a foot. This executive order that Trump just signed also talks about, at least it hints at a return to the statues and monuments of the Confederate figures, many of which were taken down and replaced around the country, you know, during 2020, during the era after George Floyd and the rise of Black Lives Matter, which was another wasted opportunity. We let these opportunists from Black Lives Matter come in, own that moment, the George Floyd, the Justice for Black Lives movement. And I won't say we let them do it because, again, we don't control the media. I talk about it regularly, how fortunate I feel to work at a place like WLTH for Marion Williams and Natalie Ammons. You guys have to understand, this is one of the few black-owned media outlets that you're going to see of this size. I talk about it regularly, the Telecommunications Act of 1996. We used to have thousands of independent media stations and media companies in this country. After Bill Clinton signed that in 1996, the amount of media, particularly black media, that was independently owned started to plummet. Because you started seeing all these mergers. Now there's very little black-owned media in this country. Very, very little black-owned media in this country that's independent. We just saw Byron Allen. I gotta probably look into more his case, but he filed a huge lawsuit for billions of dollars because he was trying to start an independent black media conglomerate, and he was being blocked every step of the way. People like Ice Cube, like Master P, like Diddy. A lot of people think that the reason they finally took Diddy down was because Diddy was trying to start a black-owned media conglomerate, independent from his corporate masters. I'm not saying he's not guilty of the stuff he's been accused of. I'm not saying he's a saint. I'm just saying that's what a lot of he announced his intentions to do this a few years ago with Revolt TV, that he wanted to have a black-owned media conglomerate. And you see, almost like a year later, they just, we've seen what's happened to P. Diddy. I am no fan of P. Diddy. I think he has always been a contemptible human being in a lot of ways. Even going back to the 90s, how he treated all of his artists, from Biggie Smalls and Craig Mack and all those people. But I'm just saying, for the sake of this argument, that he was one of the people who announced his intention to create a black-owned media network, and they would not let him. He is obviously not going to be in a position to do that anytime soon. And so what you're getting now is an overwhelming rollback of our culture, our media, our arts, our museums, our sciences, our all of our institutions. And this isn't just starting now. This has been going on for a while. Like I said, we've talked about 30 years now, how all of this feeds into one another. What Bill Clinton did in 1996, well, Fox News starts in 1996. Fox News allows George W. Bush to get elected. George W. Bush snowballs it even more. You start seeing even more mergers and conglomerates throughout the Bush administration. Then you see Obama gets elected. He makes it legal, literally with the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, if I'm not mistaken, that makes it legal to propagandize the American public. He puts more whistleblowers and journalists in prison than every administration in American history put together. Then that leads to somebody like Donald Trump. Donald Trump comes in and decides that he's going to literally be king as president. And now he's just coming out saying, I'm going to just go out and do it. I'm going to change everything. I'm going to literally rewrite the history of the United States. This executive order also calls for improvements to Independence Hall in Philadelphia by July 4th, 2026, which of course is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. He's intending to have a huge military-style parade. Now, again, I mean, look, of all the stuff that people are freaking out about, I think that's the least thing that I care the least about. All kinds of countries have military-style parades all the time. It's, Russia has Victory Day parade because, the West pretends that Russia didn't have a huge part in winning World War II, so they celebrate themselves. But this is a part of an overall cult of personality for Trump. He's going to center himself in this 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. In particularly, Trump has singled out the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which opened in 2016 near the White House, the Women's History Museum, which is in development, and the American Art Museum for criticism. So again, this is direct attacks on Black history, women's history, and the American Art Museum for criticism. Obviously, most artists are what? Pretty culturally liberal. Under Donald Trump's order, J.D. Vance will work with the White House Budget Office to make sure future funding of the Smithsonian Institution is not spent on programs that degrade shared American values, divide Americans based on race, or promote programs or ideologies inconsistent with federal law and policy. Here we go again. This is about rewriting history. What they call divisive, we call literal, factual happenings. These things actually happen. This is how in places like Texas, they've banned speeches from Cesar Chavez, the greatest Hispanic leader this country ever had, from Martin Luther King, I think the greatest man this country's ever produced. In Tennessee, they banned the autobiography of Ruby Bridges, the young girl who had integrated New Orleans schools. She's still alive. She's in her 60s now. And she literally had bricks thrown at her by adults when she was 6 years old. And she has to walk around to this day knowing how much America fought to keep her from being able to go to school, a decent school. It also requires the Interior Secretary to reinstate monuments, memorials, and statues, and similar properties that have been removed or changed since January 2020. So all the General Lee statues and Thomas Jefferson, I never agreed with that personally. I always said we should just leave the statues alone because I knew it would cause this type of backlash. I always knew it would cause this type of backlash. We would see this type of backlash from the right when they got back in power. I knew that was going to happen. And now it's happening. Now we're probably going to have, Robert E. Lee on like the dollar bill or something. Who knows? But to me, I think this order and the overall tenor of the Trump administration's ire being set towards Black history has an even more direct purpose, more insidious purpose. They are trying to erase the history of chattel slavery, Jim Crow segregation, and its lingering effects because they know that the reparations movement has been gaining steam. And I really believe that this is what it's about more than anything else. Because look, as I always tell you guys regularly, Donald Trump is a con artist. He has no beliefs, he has no morals, he has no values. But he, like most white people, not all, there's some of y'all who out there who are cool. I work with some of y'all, I talk to some of y'all on a regular basis. But a large percentage of white America, even if they are supposedly good ones, do not want to live in a world in which black people have equal footing to them. They may say they do, but that is not what they want. And not just them. Every group of people, especially immigrant groups, they view themselves on the pecking order by how far above black people they are. A lot of them. So a lot of these people who smile in your face on a regular basis have a certain, they're okay with you as long as you down there. As long as you and your people stay down there in the ghetto, they good with you. They'll play with you, they'll hang out with you, they'll shake your hand. But they do not look forward to the day in which legacy black Americans stand eye to eye with them economically, politically, and socially. That is not what they want. Show you how two-faced Donald Trump is. In 2017, this is what he had to say about the African American National Museum of African American History and Culture. In 2017, he said, "I'm deeply proud that we now have a museum that honors the millions of African American men and women who built our national heritage, especially when it comes to faith, culture, and the unbreakable American spirit." He said that while he was touring the very same museum that he's taking aim at right now. He was with Tim Scott and Ben Carson. So why would his viewpoint change so drastically in such a short period of time? Well, over the last few years, and we talked about it on this show, the reparations movement has picked up a lot of steam. There are chapters of ADOS, of FBA, of other legacy black reparations movements. I just saw an advertisement for one here in Gary. I wish I could remember what it was, but it's actually, there's a reparations event going on here in the city of Gary in the next month or so. I think in a few weeks, if I'm not mistaken. But if I find that, I will definitely tell you guys about it. But the reparations movement has gotten considerably stronger and considerably louder over time, thanks to people like Yvette Carnell, like Tone Moore, like Cobra, like Tariq Nasheed. So many people, and there's multiple groups that don't even like each other, that have totally different viewpoints, but they all agree on this one thing, that reparations are due. And they're not going anywhere. And so in 2017, these people, they were no threat to Donald Trump. They were no threat to the status quo. But as time has gone on, and these movements have gotten more and more powerful, I think Donald Trump and a lot of people in America are saying, oh, we got to cut this off. And how do we do that? We completely shortcut and short circuit the narrative that America was ever built on chattel slavery. We short circuit the idea that America ever had Jim Crow, that we ever did redlining, that we ever had mass incarceration in a two-tiered legal system of mass incarceration, that we ever had, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers murdered in this country. That we ever had pogroms all over the country where black neighborhoods, black communities were burned to the ground. If you change that history, then black people have no argument for reparations. And so they are going all out to change and shift these narratives so that we won't have an argument. And let me tell you folks this. I know most of y'all listen to this are Democrats. The Democrats ain't gonna fight too hard against this. They don't want you to get reparations either. They want you to be helpless so that you will continue to vote for them without asking for anything. Just please protect us from the bad Republican man. Please just protect us. Ooh, protect us, yes. That's what they want. Joe Biden pretty much said as much during the 2020 election when he said that black people didn't need reparations. We needed social workers to teach us how to raise our kids, and we needed to play more records for our children because black kids don't hear as many words as white kids, and that's why we have a racial wealth gap. Barack Obama told us that we didn't need reparations because we had him. So again, they'll let Trump be the bad guy. Chuck Schumer already said they basically gonna let Trump be the bad guy. All Trump is the bad cop. Democrats play the good cop. Trump plays the bad cop. Both of them had the same intent. But the bad cop comes in and, come on, confess. Come on. And he beats you up and he throws you in the dungeon and, And then the good cop comes in. Hey, man, I really like you, man. But if you could, you can feel good about confessing to me, man. You can confess to me. I won't tell anybody, When in actuality, the good cop and the bad cop are both working together. And that's what's happening here. Donald Trump's always been in concert, overtly, covertly, with the Democrats in some capacity. That's why it is imperative that we have a third party in this country, that people vote outside of the two-party duopoly. We have to do that. The Democrats and Republicans have been playing this game on us for way too long, and this is just another symbol of that. Just to show you how far that they are going with this whitewashing of American history, the Department of Defense, at one point, before the outrage affected them, removed training videos recognizing the Tuskegee Airmen and an online biography of Jackie Robinson. In February, Donald Trump fired Air Force General C.Q. Brown, who was a champion of racial diversity in the military, as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. General Brown, in the wake of George Floyd's killing, spoke publicly about his experiences as a black man and was only the second black general to serve as chairman. They've also fired diversity officers across government, curtailed some agency celebrations of Black History Month, and terminated grants and contracts for projects ranging from planting trees in disadvantaged communities to studying achievement gaps in American schools. This is about short-circuiting the reparations movement. That's what this is about. It is that simple, folks. Nobody, no crime. Right? Nobody, no crime. They're hiding their body. There it is. All right, folks. When we get back, we are going to talk about China, and how they exposed all these big, expensive brands that make all their products in China. Yeah, and charge you an arm and a leg for it. The Chinese are actually telling you how much it actually costs to make those products. We'll be right back after these.